So welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series brought to you by AKFI, the Actionable Knowledge Foundation Institute, the world's first non-profit industry association committed to bridging the gap between ESG sustainability and digital transformation. Actionable ESG Talks bring together great minds to discuss the current state and the future states of ESG sustainability and digital transformation, and shall add AI. I'm delighted to be here with our guest, Mihir Patel. Welcome here. And I'll take a few seconds to introduce you. You are an author, consultant, and thought leader in the field of supply chain management with a notable track record in crafting and executing innovative operational strategies and embedding sustainability in the supply chain fabric. A very well needed skill set. His international career spanning over a decade of distinguished by his leading role in spearheading comprehensive supply chain transformations and pioneering resilience-driven initiatives. I should add, Mihir and I, we are both part of the ISCEA Advisory. The ISCEA, or the International Supply Chain Education Alliance, is the first organization certifying supply chain managers around the globe. Welcome again.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us today. And as our tradition goes, we're starting with a broad question on how the current supply chain trends from the perspective of traceability, because we're adding AI to today's discussion and IoT, Internet of Things. How do you see these trends evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I jump to answer that, it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you discussing these topics. I know, we connected because of our mutual interest on this topic and like just the overall supply chain subject matter. And obviously, working with you as the board member on ISCA is again, it's been great. So thank you for having me. And yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, I've been part of EY Ernst& Young for about 3.5 years now and been working very closely with some of the very innovative and pioneering things within supply chain, within operations, and more related to technology like AI, IoT, and things like that, right? So couple of things that we see that are coming up a lot in this is like different use cases of AI and Gen AI more specifically, right? Like AI has been around since 1956, right? It's just that now the adoption is picking up and the advent of these new innovative technologies like chat gpt and those kind of things like language learning models is just accelerating the adoption of gen ai and ai in general within supply chain, right? So few use cases that we have seen in the industry is obviously they're trying to use AI in like sourcing field, right? Like a lot of different ways to do that. It could help you prepare your technical analysis of the RFP responses that you get from supplier. It can help you generate an RFP a lot faster than how an engineer or a procurement manager would do in due time. It can also help you to a point like help you with negotiation and help you with like developing negotiating strategy and a lot of like tools and applications are available in the market. They are doing this already. It's not like we are talking about this will happen in next couple of years. They are already doing this. Like, okay, the level of maturity might be different, but like they are still already doing this, right? And that was just within the field of procurement and sourcing. Like if you look at the domain within planning, there are huge opportunities. They're already being tapped right now. For example, doing forecasting, which is always Achilles heels of a lot of different companies. It becomes a lot more accurate with the use of predictive analytics, with the use of AI in and different algorithms and different models that goes along with this. Just helping them cleaning the data or bringing in right insights out of data is another big plus within this. And again, like a lot of companies are doing this, a lot of technology tools are adopting these models within supply chain, within their tools, to leverage it for their clients, to leverage it for their own companies. Apart from all of these, like obviously, manufacturing side, I think I would say two things here. Like one, obviously AI, but also IoT. It has been around for a while, right? Like IoT is not a new term, but now with the advent of AI, like all that IoT data that was being extracted out of the manufacturing processes, I think now it is I would say, like a lot more useful than before, because it is not a human or a coded uh, application that is trying to extract insights out of this. Now like it is all like an automated machine or like an automated system that has been trained to do this, is doing it, can do it like 10 times or like even more faster. Like that number I'm just making it up, but like it can do really very fast all those things. It can do multiple runs without getting like even when like you are on a break, like the machine is continuously running in the back and like giving you insights which could like improve your operations overall, which could like reduce your downtime and like increase your reliability of the machines and all of those good things, which uh were basically like the gaps in the operation, or which were basically the waste in the operations overall within supply chain, right? So I think we are seeing a lot of these things, which I know we talk about like future, but this is already happening, right? And it is just the question of like how fast it can mature from here on, because you would see companies like start adopting a lot of these technology, and there are, right? Like I think just a couple of days back we saw a report that Accenture was publishing, like they had the new billings up to like very high level than previous, particularly on the AI work that they're doing. And you would hear this from a lot of different companies. We hear like a lot of investment being made in AI, like big tech companies and other companies, and trying to push forward the technology at the same time, like making sure that it's not just the technology that they're pushing, it is also the use cases or the adoption of it that makes supply chain a lot more embedded within this technology at the same time, like a lot more efficient and optimized for the companies to operate. So I think we are seeing some great things, and like I'm excited about the future of these technology within supply chain for sure.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning it's moving into 70 years of existence. AI started as a chess player or an automated chess player many
Right.
years ago, and you really position it not so much in the future, I would say, because my question was more about trends, and you say it's here. It's not a question of future trends. It's more on how many ways and using its flexibility, how well it can be adapted to the needs of the supply chain and the reporting in the supply chain, the analysis, the measurements or risk management, which is part of the finance industry in the supply chain. So no, thank you for a comprehensive answer on that. Earlier we were talking about I should pronounce it FSMA or FSMA, the Food Safety Modernization Act, which is new to us on this show. And maybe you can give us a little bit of ideas what it is, what benefits it conveys to us, and how it fits in the bigger picture of sustainability in the supply chain.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And it is connected to like the trends that we just talked about, right? Like the use of technology, AI and IoT and things like that. And this is like one place. I think FSMA 204 regulation is one place you are seeing like a huge application of these trends, of these technology, right? So basically what FSMA 204 traceability rule is, it is one enforced by FDA, so our Food and Drug Association in US. It is about saving, or like it is about like having public safety in mind. Like foodborne illnesses are kind of like we see a whole lot in the world, right? Like few years back, like Chipotle had some accidents and things like that, and we see like there are always like questions about bird flu and like salmonella and things like that, right? So what FSMA 204 regulation is about is to track your food products, your ingredients, all the way to the source, and then on the downstream side, all the way to the end consumers, right? So this regulation has been there for a while, right? But what the changes are now is that now the level of details required a lot more than before. Second, they have identified a fixed list of food items. For example, nut butter is part of that, cheese, certain varieties of cheese, particularly, are part of that, and things like that, right? So they have about like 14 to 16 food items on that list, which is like going to grow as we go further in the time period, right? So basically, what FDA is asking, like, hey, if you are producing or if you're dealing with any of the food that is part of that list, uh, you need to provide data about that item, how it is moving through your supply chain, right? So they have like two key terminologies there. One is KDEs, which is key data elements, and I'll explain that in a second. And the other one is CTE, which is critical tracking events, right? So CTE is with respect to your supply chain. You have, let's say, if you are a manufacturer, you are receiving the product from a supplier, raw materials from a supplier. You are transforming that product from like one form to the other form, and then you are shipping it, right? So that you're receiving, transformation, and shipping are the three key CTEs that you are engaged in your operations. You need to identify like the key data elements, right? There's no like specific definition around that, but the key data elements is basically like any data that can help you track your product through this operations, through this critical tracking events, right? So what FSMA is asking now is, we may come to you with a request that, hey, this particular product or particular lot number, can you give us a sortable spreadsheet where you are able to track this particular product all the way from when it is received in your system to consumed, or like wherever you moved it forward in your operations, right? All of that has to happen within 24 hours, right? So the onus is on the operator, or on the the company that is managing that particular product, to bring out this data and hand it over to FDA whenever they are audited for it. So it's a big change. Something like this is already there or already exists in the pharmaceutical industry, but for CPG industry, it's new, right? For food products, it's new, and as I said in the beginning, like the intention behind this is to help save foodborne illnesses to spread further, because like if you are able to track where you sent your last bucket or last a pallet of a particular product to your consumer, you are able to track it, and then you are able to if there is an issue like salmonella or bird flu, you are able to track it immediately and stem the spread of foodborne illnesses. So I think like it's a great application and a great move in the right direction. And now we are trying to now companies are trying to adopt this and make their supply chains ready through different technology use and a lot of different things to make sure they are compliant for on this regulation.
Very interesting, and to me, it's sort of an added value. It reminds me actually of the European Union starting to implement passports for different products, country of origin, and so on. So I think it's moving in the right direction, and I think it's a question maybe, but can it have double use in the sense that not only safeguard and ensure safety of the food supplies, but actually ensure compliance with regulatory needs especially if the company operates in global markets in Europe and so on, where the regulatory needs are more strict or more demanding, more
I think you are on
complex.
right path, right? Like that is exactly how we see this as well. Like this is basically like providing you the traceability and visibility of your product, right? If you are able to implement this correctly, right? Which like which I said, like as I said before, like it would need like a lot of different technology adoption and like improvements within your operations and stuff like that. But once you are able to adopt this, it gives you visibility into like depending on like how far you can get the data from, visibility into the nth tier of your supply chain, which is always a problem when you talk about like sustainability or you talk about like regulatory requirements and things like that, right? And something like this would help solve that problem. So it's not just like dual purpose, but I would say like it's a very multi-purpose thing. It could give you like insights into risk management on like where your major risks are. It could already tell you like if your certain supplier is just a single source at the nth tier, you would identify that very soon compared to like when something goes wrong, and like you can identify disruption earlier in the process. So it helps like and just overall like sustainability point of view, like you are able to figure out like what your suppliers are doing, how they are producing the products, how they are bringing it on like on the overall supply chain and all of those things, right? So definitely it starts with the food regulation and like compliance to that regulation, but like once you have the system in place, you can use it for a lot of different use cases, right? And that's what we are saying, like this implementation or this adoption would basically pay for itself in like a few years of time if you start using it for a lot of other things and not just like limited to the tracking of product or like food for FSMA regulation.
And as I mentioned, and actually, to me, looking at the amount of data it creates, it probably exceeds the requirements for sustainability reporting, which is more based on quarterly or annual basis, typically annual basis, and linked to double materiality to a lot of other reports. So it's very interesting, and in some way, thinking, and thanking you also for bringing this example, because this is an example where the industries are moving ahead with traceability, which is a core element in the relation between the suppliers and their customers in the supply chain. They all want to have this capability. And as you mentioned, actually, if you have to report in 24 hours, that involves real time data collection, acquisition, processing. So back to what you mentioned about AI trends, this is also a definitely good source for big data for AI to analyze and to process and to report on.
Yeah, no, absolutely, right? Like, and like we talk about like using the data, right? Like first, like getting the data is the big issue in a lot of this AI systems or any other technology, right? But and we have seen challenges getting this data from anywhere, like beyond your tier one suppliers, right? Like you might get the data from your tier one because you have like direct relationships with them and you're managing them on a more regular basis versus other tiers of suppliers. But this helps you like identify, and like just the sheer visibility element of this, like that helps you with your supply chain resilience, your sustainability, and we often talk about like how resilience and sustainability go hand in hand, right? So if you're solving this traceability for your supply chain, I think that solves a lot of different problems. And no matter like how you do it, whether you use technology, whether you like start with like simplest of solution and then like mature into like more technology heavy like IoT and blockchains and whatnot. Like I think that's just like growth that you can see, but like just having the basic simplest of traceability solution in place, or a process in place, like that would help you with a lot of different things.
Absolutely, me here, and just to I fully agree with what you said. Data is essential. We do a lot of work now in AKFI trying to identify better methods to collect the data. And we asked, actually, when you start to look at the supply chain, you notice a gap between what the companies that report, call them their customers, and the suppliers have to do. And we looked at the different industries and we find gaps even at the strategy level. And we started to think about creating an informational model. Before data, you have to request, and we call it the sustainable request for information right now project, trying to exactly identify what you said. It's what data do you have to collect, and again, this FISMA 204 example is very revealing to me. It's a bit surprising that it's so detailed in the US, which is um, more a follower in terms of sustainability than a leader these days. So no, it's a great example, and thank you for linking these mechanisms together. As you mentioned, of course, AI it's on top of mind of everybody. So we're trying to find useful and leading applications for AI. And well, uh, I'm pretty sure you said it in one way or in multiple ways, but focusing on the value of the reporting for the supply chain. So looking not only from the side of the stakeholders, which would be the consumers in this case, what is the value going back in the supply chain being driven by data, if I may say so.
Yeah, absolutely, right. And yeah, like what, let's start with like all the stakeholders in the picture, right? Here, like starting with the most relevant one, the consumers at the end, right? One,
Right.
they get to like sharing of all of this information is still like a work in progress, right? Like there are some companies who put barcodes on their products so that like if you want to track it, where it came from, all of that is now possible, but not many companies are still following that, right? But even with whatever we have in place right now, it gives consumer an idea on like what they're consuming, where it is coming from, how it is being treated over the process, and more importantly, whether it is safe for their consumptions or not, right? Like let's say today, if you talk about like with all the news about bird flu going on, if people are able to make an educated decision on like, hey, this particular set of eggs are coming from so and so location where there is no cases of bird flu, and so it is super safe to consume, and things like that, right? It helps everybody. Right now, like it might not be the case that the product that you're consuming is infected, but people are just scared to buy something because they are hearing news about that, right? So from the company's perspective, like the seller's perspective also, it helps because then it gives clarity to the consumer that, hey, this is safe for consumption, you can go like use it without any hesitation in your mind, right? From the operational aspect of it, right? Like looking throughout the supply chain, right from our like main retailer or like manufacturer, right? Like one, they, because of this data, they can, as we talked about before, like manage their risk really well. They can see like any major disruption in a particular area or things like that, they can track that. uh, they can reduce the waste, right? And one of the big example of this is, let's say if your company is going through something really bad like salmonella or bird flu, and you have to track all the products down from to the retailer and recall it back into your like so that way like it doesn't spread much, right? And if you do not have data, we have seen companies casting a net as wide as like three times of what is required, which is
Mhm.
basically like 200% waste, which they should not required to do, right? And it's a huge amount. Like let's say if instead of like three pallets of eggs that you needed to remove because they are infected, you are now removing like 9 because you didn't know like which exactly the 3 to track, right? You didn't have the data to track. So that's a huge optimization in itself. Like you are reducing the waste in your system. uh Same goes for suppliers, or like their suppliers and things like that. One, they know where their product is going. If that particular region has requirements and specific needs, or regulatory requirements, because of all this information available now, they are easily able to document that and easily able to pass through the the customs and all of these things, which makes their life easier, plus their lead times shorter, and all of that helps both parties, the suppliers as well as the manufacturers, right? So there are huge operation efficiency gains to be had because of this. There are huge just public health awareness and things like that. So consumer side, there are huge efficiency gains as well. And just overall, it makes the supply chain so resilient, so sustainable, that it helps every stakeholder in the process.
No, thank you.